2 Timothy 4. I've been talking about the first couple of verses here. And in verse 2, Paul's charge to Timothy: preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, and encourage. Now, I talked about correct and rebuke, and that's not like a brand new idea here. Remember, Paul, back in what we have as chapter 3, he had talked about how the scripture is God-breathed and it's useful. And two of the things that he said it's useful for were correction and rebuke. And then here, Paul adds one other aspect. He said, correct and rebuke and encourage. I know everybody's not wired the same, but I think in general, most people respond better to encouragement when there is correction and rebuke involved, and then encouragement, than if it's just correction and rebuke. I don't think anybody's never had the experience of being rebuked or even corrected without encouragement. And what it feels like is the message, and I know I'm very broken, so I freely admit that, but the message I always got from that, and honestly, I still kind of do, is, well, you're just not good enough. You better try harder. Oh, and by the way, you no matter how hard you try, you're never going to measure up. You're just inadequate. It's kind of like the old joke. The guy comes home from his therapist and he has a broad smile on his face, and his wife says, "Wow, what are you so happy about?" He said, "Honey, I discovered today in my session that I don't have an inferiority complex. I'm just inferior." Well, I don't think that's what Paul has in mind here. Yes, correct, and rebuke when that's called for, necessary, appropriate, but encourage. I think that's a hard thing to hold in balance. I'm pretty good at offering correction. I'm pretty good at offering encouragement. I'm not very good at rebuke, and the reason is because it takes me more than a little while usually to get where I'll go ahead and say the rebuke because I'm all, worked up. The problem when I get there is encouragement kind of takes a vacation. It's way out the back door by then. Can't even see it in the rearview mirror. I want to kind of narrow the focus of this down for parents and grandparents. This would also be true of employers and bosses. You do need to correct. And there are times that a rebuke is called for. But encourage. My kids have grown up in a generation where it's all about encouragement. There's no correction, there's no rebuke. It's all about self-esteem. So we have now, I don't remember where I read it the first time, but I've stolen it, and I don't even know who I've stolen it from. But we have a generation of kids that can't make change, but they feel great about themselves. This is not true of every kid, but there was a kind of obvious turn in the philosophy and approach to education back in the 80s and 90s, when it was all about, you need to, these kids they'll get by if they can't read and if they can't do math, but they're not going to get by if they don't feel good about themselves. So this is going to be about self-esteem. What is produced is kids, boy, this is harsh. It is kids who feel like if they don't get encouraged, then they're victimized. And when you're a victim, you're basically, you have a get out of jail free card for any and every bad decision. Well, if I'd have been encouraged instead of just, corrected, you're so mean. Okay. I'm very thankful that not every kid who came through that educational system came out with that mentality, but there are enough that did, that they have created a wave, a cultural wave, that either we're going to have to figure out how to turn the surfboard around and face directly into it, or it's going to take us out. Wow, I didn't even realize I had that much, I got worked up. I don't hate these young people. I mainly feel sorry for them. I don't know if hate's the right word, but I do not like the philosophy that they have inherited. Okay, now back to correct, rebuke, and encourage. You need all of these. And there are times I wish I could talk to preachers, and then I think, why would they listen to me? But if I could, I would say, guys, men, women, preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, and encourage. Don't just rebuke. Don't just correct. Encourage. One of the most powerful encouragements that I know of is to be able to help another person gain a picture, a mental image of what their life would be like if they observed the correction and even the rebuke of wisdom. And sometimes I do that by saying, I see this in you. Most people don't see that in themselves, the ones I work with. All right. Encourage. Homework here. Application time. I would like for you, and I got to do this too, to put in the front of your mind, what could I say or do today that would bring encouragement to someone who is in my world? Just one. I mean, anybody can do just one. But, all right. Now let's really step back. Who's Paul talking to? Well, he's talking to Timothy directly. And so for Timothy's ministry in Ephesus, Paul is becoming very direct in his instruction, in his charge to Timothy. What's it mean to us? I'm not a preacher. I don't lead a church. So it doesn't mean anything to me. Well, no, I think the principles apply. All right. Once he had said correct, rebuke, and encourage, he goes on with great patience and careful instruction. This is interesting on several levels to me. First of all, for Timothy in his role as the pastor of the church in Ephesus, a church that that had tremendous potential, but it also had some problems. Every church does. I think it was Clovis Chappell who he died decades ago, many decades ago now. But he was a really good preacher way back in the day, and he said, "Stop looking for the perfect church, because if you find it and you attach yourself to it, it won't be perfect anymore." Ephesus, the Ephesian church, was not perfect, but it had some wonderful strengths. And so Paul kind of leans into that for Timothy and says, with great patience, no really a good steward of ministry is impatient. Well, that's not fair. Pretty much everybody has a point where they become impatient, but the ability to be patient, this is a gift from God, but it is also a developed skill. It's a developed mentality. Be patient. In fact, Paul didn't just say be patient. He says with great patience. And what I get from that is this is not just your old garden variety patience. We're talking about big patience. Why? Because people require patience. I'm not good at patience. I tend to want what I want, and right now, actually yesterday would have been better. Well, that's not how God works in people's lives. Nobody gets instant maturity. It requires patience on the person who's maturing, but on the person who's leading that person. Be patient. Have great patience, in fact, and careful instruction. Well, he's already talked about rebuke, correct, rebuke, encourage. That's kind of the formula. And then he says, and careful instruction. Let's think about what's careful instruction involve. Well, first of all, what Paul wrote about, be prepared in season and out of season. In other words, prepare yourself. You've got to make preparation, and then careful instruction draws on that, and we choose. It's a dangerous thing for me to just stand up and let it rip, because there are a lot of times that my mouth gets ahead of my brain, and I say things in a way that I wish I could pull those words back, but see, you can't do that. And so one of the reasons that you have to be careful about your instruction is because you don't get, there's no do-over, right? Careful instruction is usually, you can tell when someone is offering you careful instruction. They choose their words wisely and carefully. They have taken care mentally, right? So that when they instruct, it sound wise, useful, doable instruction. Is there anybody that these two things don't on some level apply? All right, great patience. You know anybody that doesn't need great patience? No matter what their role in life is? And careful instruction. Maybe you're a little bit like me, and at this stage in my life and my career, I don't have a big audience. And people are not, blowing my phone up to ask me to come and talk to them and give them my wisdom. No, not happening. But I do still, even if I weren't in my counseling practice, there would be times when I would be able to and need to give careful instruction. Well, I'm going to try and move on from that next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.